Vegas.
Now back to those across-the-board spending cuts that are a reality. With $85 billion in new spending reductions in effect, attention is turning to the next chapter in the budget battles. That's a fast-approaching deadline to pass a measure preventing a government shutdown. And both President Obama and the House Speaker John Boehner say they plan to get it done.
The House is going to move a continuing resolution next week to fund the government past March 27th. And I'm hopeful that we won't have to deal with the threat of a government shutdown while we're dealing with the sequester at the same time.
But with all the dysfunction in Washington these days, will lawmakers be able to cooperate? Ron Bonjean, former communications director for former House Speaker Dennis Hastert, and Richard Goodstein is a Democratic political consultant, a former advisor to Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign. Gentlemen, always good to talk to you both. Thanks for being here. Sure. Ron, are we going to see a government shutdown?
I don't think we are. I think both sides understand the stakes are very high. They're already dealing with a sequester. The government funding runs out on March 27th, and they have enough to deal with. Look, you know, the president has lost his leverage. Republicans we are now dealing with spending cuts, and we're not dealing with tax increases. So the president has every incentive to come to the table to keep the government functioning. Republicans, on the other hand, they want to deal with the sequester. They want to deal with the debt ceiling. You know, they want to get those issues done. And I think that I do think that they will find a way to avoid this government shutdown.
Richard, do you agree with Ron that the Republicans now have the upper hand in these battles? And what do you think about the likelihood or not of a shutdown?
I would tell you a couple months ago, Rick, I actually thought a government shutdown was at least as likely as not. I actually tend to agree now that it's not. And I think both parties are coming at this for different reasons. The Republicans still have very vivid memories that they did not, profit from the government shutdown under Speaker Gingrich. This was not something that the public very much thought was a good course of action, and they blame the Republicans for it politically. I think President Obama, on the other hand, doesn't want to be saddled with all the fighting around a government shutdown and, frankly, all the economic uncertainty when he's trying to get immigration reform done, addressing gun violence, so many other priorities of his. So I think for him, he'll put up with the sequestration and hopefully we'll make the most out of it. But I think, for those different reasons, the parties will actually come together.
Fox News polling this week, Ron, asked folks how they thought the president could solve the nation's problems. 59% say you might want to talk to the Republicans. 32% say, okay, go ahead and travel and talk to voters, which seems to be what the president has decided to do. But how could you blame him, Ron? The president is a good campaigner. All you have to do is look at the last election. He certainly has a way of speaking to the voters, doesn't he?
The challenge here is that while the president is going out and campaigning on the trail, he's trying to scare people into believing that the sky is falling, and he's trying to scare Republicans to the table. Now, that hasn't worked. So he really has to come to the table now and negotiate with the Republicans on the sequestration if he wants to get something really done. And I think that, and the media is starting to catch on too. The president has made claims that janitors would have pay cuts who are working in the Capitol, and that teachers' funding would be cut. And in fact, the media found out, that's not the case. So I think he's losing a lot of credibility while he's going out there to the campaign. It's different when you're campaigning to win an election. It's another thing when you're trying to govern a country. And I think Republicans and I think, frankly, generally Americans want him to come to the table to negotiate with Republicans because he's the commander-in-chief and the buck stops with him.
Is there a political advantage, though, Richard, for the president in not putting these fiscal matters to bed and sort of, keeping them alive, keeping the fight, and putting the Republicans, trying to keep them on their heels? Do you think that the president is sort of taking some kind of pleasure in not being able to resolve all of these things?
Look, he benefits, the country benefits, both parties benefit if the economy does better. I think all this uncertainty, look, even if you're not getting a pink slip, you may be worried that you might, and you therefore might be kind of pulling back on your spending. That's not good for anybody, and I don't think the president profits from this. I mean, I think the sure sign that his travels around the country are working is that what you hear from Republicans just frankly whining about the fact that he's doing it. And honestly, he should have been doing this 4 years ago because he realized when he had kind of before he submitted his first budget plan, the Republicans said we're going to go down the line against it. The only way he was going to kind of get his goals accomplished was going to states where there were persuadable senators and congressmen who were Republicans. That's the only way he's going to do it this time as well. So I actually think he will keep doing it because I think that's the most beneficial way for him to get his goals accomplished.
Just, Ron, about your fellow Republicans, speaking of the Jedi mind meld that the president made reference to yesterday, that a lot of people were laughing at. Is there a Jedi mind meld that Boehner has that he can use against his caucus, some of whom don't seem to want to follow his lead?
Oh, look, listen, I think most of Republicans are with Boehner this time. You know, the president has gotten what he wanted. He got $600 billion worth of tax increases, and now Republicans across the board are saying no more. We are not going to do that. We are dealing with spending cuts only, and that's why the president's campaign across the country to scare people and scare Republicans to the table didn't work. So I think, frankly, you know, Boehner has a great mind meld on President Obama.
But he's had to
right now.
pass a lot of bills lately that have not gotten the majority of his majority, which is your old boss's rule. Can he get it together?
I think it was really smart of Boehner to do that. And the reason why I say that is when you have a Republican president, having a majority, the majority works. But when you're trying to get a politically sensitive issues out of the way that hurt them in the last election, I think it's a smart move to get it done now as opposed to later.
We've got to leave it there. Richard, next time I'll give you the last word.
No
Richard
problem.
Goodstein, Ron Bonjean.
Thanks,
Enjoy
Rick.
the rest of the weekend, guys.
Thanks very much.
Okay, well, what if your boss was keeping tabs on everything you ate? That's exactly what's happening at several companies around the country, all in the name of health care. I want to hear your thoughts. Tweet me at Arthel Neville.